Undeclared wars are commonplace. Tragically, our government engages in preemptive war, otherwise known as aggression, with no complaints from the American people. Sadly, we have become accustomed to living with the illegitimate use of force by government. To develop a truly free society, the issue of initiating force must be understood and rejected.
What if sometimes, to love your country, you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, March 17th, 2026, St. Patrick's Day here in the West, particularly in the U.S., and especially in New York, where Scott and I are located. Scott Ritter joins us now. Thank you very much for your time, Scott. Always appreciated. What happened at the girls' school in Tehran where 170 young women, children, and their teachers were incinerated? How did the U.S. military cause that to happen?
First of all, it was in the city of Manab, which is right there on the coast of the Strait of Hormuz, which is why this is so important. What happened is in the early 2000s, the Iranians began to build missile units designed to shut down the Strait of Hormuz in a time of crisis. This is especially after Dick Cheney was talking about invading Iran. And they created this unit called the Arif Missile Brigade. It has 4 battalions. Each battalion has a specific capability from short to medium to long range missiles, and then special units that operate using torpedoes and mines, et cetera. And their job is to control the Strait of Hormuz. And they had a headquarters compound that consisted of a couple warehouses, a couple administrative buildings, a headquarters building. Around 2011, basically the Arif Missile Brigade had outgrown the facility it was in. So they literally abandoned this facility and they moved to different locations, more modern facilities, et cetera. And this place was abandoned. Around 2016, the city of Manab put in a bid and had the northern corner of it, the former headquarters building. They said they wanted to convert that to a school. And so they literally built a wall separating this facility, refurbished the building, painted murals, painted playgrounds, and it opened it up with separate entrances that had nothing to do with the other abandoned compound. This was done in the public, and the United States knew about this. How do we know? Because Defense Department maps of Manab, when they show this compound, clearly mark this as a school. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Now, at the same time, the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain has a mission of, making sure that the Strait of Hormuz can stay open. And so they've been running nonstop intelligence operations against the Arif Brigade. They've been collecting on it. They have special human units that debrief fishermen. They fly the drones over, intercepting all the electronic signals. They have satellites and other aircraft taking photographs. The Arif Missile Brigade is one of the most heavily collected units in the world. We know a lot about it. And the reason why I bring that up is all that information goes into a target deck. And, the Fifth Fleet's responsible for updating it because they're the war fighters. They give it to Central Command, and they keep this updated. We knew with this target deck that we had where the Arif Brigade was and where it wasn't. We knew, for instance, that abandoned compound had not only been converted partially to a school, but the central part had been converted to a hospital. We knew this, and that was also in the no strike list. Now we come to the war, and when Donald Trump told Benjamin Netanyahu told Donald Trump on February 11th that we need to go to war, Pete Hegseth came in with his genius plan of shock and awe. You don't go in and just strike the targets that are important, because we already had that target deck. We could be bombing the Arif Brigade, and we did bomb the Arif Brigade. Not too much good, because they still got the Strait of Hormuz closed, but that's another question. We needed more targets because we had to create this impression of overwhelming force coming in, so the Iranian people would say, my goodness, look at the power of America, and they've killed Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader. It's time for us to abandon the regime, rise up and remove the regime. So we needed to shock and awe these people. We needed bombs to be hitting targets. We needed things to go boom all over the country. In order to do that, you need places on the ground to hit. We had the target deck that was important, the target deck that was military relevant. That wasn't enough boom for the buck. We needed more. So they turned to an AI program called Claude, and Claude went around and just sifted through the old data. And Claude came up with a bunch of targets, including that compound, which Claude called an Iranian Revolutionary Guard Command Naval Headquarters Facility. Now, here's the thing. Normally, there would be people like me who would receive that and go, now, outdated information, throw it away. They cut me out of it. It was going into the target deck. But then in 2023, the Department of Defense created a new unit called the what is it? The bottom line is their job was to review targets to civilian. That's it. The civilian mitigation in harm resources unit. Their job was to make sure that we didn't blow up schools and things. Their job was to do one more scrub. Now, why would we need this? Because the law of war created people like me who are supposed to do this stuff. Because during the war on terror, we stopped doing that. During the war on terror, we blew up wedding parties. During the war on terror, we blew up hospitals. 2015, AC-130, banging away at a hospital that we knew was a hospital, being directed by special forces that knew it was a hospital. But we did it anyways because we just stopped caring about the law of war. The final straw that broke the camel's back was that last drone strike in Afghanistan after the troops withdrew. We sent a missile in, killed an aid worker and his family. And that's when the Defense Department went, we're doing this wrong. There's a problem here. So they created this unit. And this unit was mandated to join up with combatant commands, and they would scrub every target. And all the commanders loved this unit because it made them back to comply with the law of war. It forced them to do the job the right way, the way it's supposed to be done. It's not an interference with our combat duties to do this. It enhances our combat duties because we're hitting the right targets. The best way to create a terrorist is to blow up his home, blow up the home of a farmer. You just created a terrorist, and he'll come after you for the rest of his life. The best way to win that war is not to blow up that farm, not to blow up the mosque, not to blow up the school. So we had this unit that was doing it. Pete Hegseth came in and said, of course, that he's going to change the ethos. In March of 2025, shortly after President Trump was sworn in, Pete Hegseth dissolved this unit. He shut it down. The 10-member team that was at CENTCOM, gone. The 5 guys at Fifth Fleet, gone. Shut it down. No more scrubbing. And then he came out with his new ethos. We are going to be more lethal. No more stupid rules of engagement, he said. Lethality. We kill things. We break things. This is what we do. And he unleashed the military. And this was the mentality that then rolled into this bombing campaign. Claude generates AI targets. There's nobody screening them. They just get plugged right in because we need to do the big, booming effect. So the compound got targeted with 4 TLAMs, Tomahawk land attack missiles. They're fired from Aegis. They're fired from submarines. 4 of them, because there was 3 points of impact: 2 warehouses and the headquarters building that Claude called a headquarters building. Now, a 4th one goes because you have to have redundancy. There's a certain classified percentage of cruise missiles that don't function. It supposedly got better, but we fired almost 60 cruise missiles into a Syrian chemical weapons compound in 2017, or alleged chemical weapons compound. 23 of them didn't hit their target. That's almost 50%. I'm not saying that's the number because it's a classified number, but a large number of our cruise missiles don't hit their target. So we brought in a 4th one, and its job was, after the first 3 hit, the cruise missile has an onboard camera, and it comes in and click, takes it, and then it goes into a loitering pattern while it transmits the data back to the targeting cell, who looks at the imagery, decide whether or not they killed the targets. There's their battle damage assessment. So The imagery comes back. The guys look at it. The warehouses each have a hole where they're supposed to have a hole. They say, oh, done. The school has a collapse, which is one of the criteria of, but the thing about the school, which we weren't calling schools, the headquarters, is the imagery is not that good. It's, the pixels aren't that refined. You don't get great resolution, but you can see there's people all around it. And the targeter went, that's the headquarters. And there's a lot of people around there. These are the missile people we need to kill. And so they went back to that loitering missile, reprogrammed it, and had to come in and reattack. Now, what they didn't realize is after that first missile hit the building and collapsed, the students had already been assembled. There were other missiles hitting in Manab, and the principal called the parents and said, you got to come get your kids. So they started to bring the kids in and bring them in, get them ready to go home. So the kids were all assembled in their classrooms with their backpacks, all that. The first missile hits, and it collapsed the building. You got kids screaming, kids dismembered, the whole thing. But the principal's running around grabbing the survivors and taking them. You know how if we have a tornado, we have a safe place in the school, the gymnasium or the cafeteria or the library, a reinforced place. They say, this is your safe place. Well, the safe place in this school was the prayer room. And so the kids started to assemble there, the survivors. The principal's bringing them in, and they get them all packed in there. And then the other cruise missile hits it. And the warhead they use is a dual effects munition. It can punch through a concrete ceiling, which this case it did. Now it comes down. It's got 350 pounds of titanium casing. The titanium has been scored, so it can break up into tiny little fragments. Inside, that's 450 pounds of high-speed, high explosive. So when it punches through with the initial charge, comes in, and then blows up, it turns the titanium into, tens of thousands of razor-sharp shards that just gut the building and literally vaporize people, slice them to death. And now, these aren't bad people. These aren't terrorists. These aren't enemy soldiers. These are 6 to 12-year-old girls scared already because they've already been hit. They're hearing their friends scream because their friends are in that other building over there collapsed. They're hearing their friends scream, cry for help. The teachers, some of them are dead. They see body parts all over the place. They're scared to death. This thing comes down and literally vaporizes them. There's an extra little bonus here because you see at the Los Alamos National Labs, they said, wait a minute, these are liquid fueled cruise missiles. We still got that JP-10 on there. JP-10's high, hot, burning fuel. And we need to maximize. So there's another thing you can do as it comes in. You can program it so that last fuel is compressed in, and then it can be released sequentially. They have a special, addition to the warhead, and it can turn into a fuel air explosive. So boom, 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 and then boom, the fireball that burns everything. 69 of these children are unrecoverable, burned to ashes because of this munition. This is what we did in order to get the bigger boom. This is a war crime. Pete Hegseth is a war criminal, a literal war criminal. No, there's no way he would survive a trial, and he should be fired, arrested, and put on trial, not by a foreign court, by an American court, because we have a law, 1996, the War Crimes Act. It prohibits this very thing. This is one of the most illegal things imaginable. There's no defense for what Pete Hegseth has done. This was intentional. You know that, Judge. You know the language. When you have somebody up there saying, no regard for the rules, increased lethality, our job is to kill. And then he goes around and gives orders such as no quarter, which is also illegal. This is a walking, talking war criminal in motion who has committed one of the most heinous war crimes possible, the slaughter of innocent children. And this was done solely because of him. He's the one who said, disband the unit that would have prevented this. He's the one that said, don't regard the laws of war. No rules of conduct. We are going in to be lethal. His intent was to kill. Without regard, because if you wanted regard, if you wanted distinction, then you obey the law of war and you review the targets for distinction, which you are required to do under the Geneva Conventions. It is a mandatory requirement of the additional protocol of 1977 to the 1949 Geneva Conventions that has been adopted, the law of war manual, which is the law for the military. Pete Hegseth said, don't obey the law. And he said, I'm canceling the regulation to make sure that we do obey the law because we hadn't been obeying the law. That's what happened to the children's school, Judge.
What a catastrophe. And Trump will probably pardon him, which is why the only recourse would be a trial elsewhere. The war crimes have no statute of limitations. The president's pardon does not extend outside the United States, and there's no venue requirement, meaning any country could try him, even a country not involved in this. This
But
is
if you
just,
impeach the president,
this is monstrous.
the president of the United States, the president can't pardon.
Say again?
Impeach the president of the United States, convict the president of the United States, and the president can't pardon.
Yeah.
I mean, there is recourse in this democracy to hold these people accountable to the rule of law. We, the people,
there
just
has
have
to be there has to be recourse, because the situation that you described is so barbaric, so inhumane. It's simply mind-boggling. And then Trump said the Iranians bombed their own school. And then when the Defense Department itself said, no, we bombed it, and they asked Trump how he wanted to respond to that, he said, I'm unfamiliar with the report you're talking about. Yeah. So a terrible, horrible, horrific state of affairs. How could the U.S. have I'm segueing a little bit, Scott, badly miscalculated, misunderstood the Iranian resilience and the asymmetric nature of the Iranian offensive responses?
Well, the interesting thing is that we didn't actually. We know now that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff briefed Donald Trump on what the likely course of action of the Iranian government would be. We know that they said that they will strike American military bases. We know that that the president was briefed that the Straits of Hormuz would be closed. So we knew that this is predictable. The fact that we didn't have plans to deal with this is different, but the Joint Chiefs of Staff warned the president, this is what's going to happen. Then we have Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence. She commissioned a national intelligence council and a review, intelligence assessment about this. And she said other things, such as you won't get regime change. Even if you kill Ali Khamenei on day one, you'll just strengthen the regime. The people will rally around the government. There's no support inside Iran for this regime change activity. They talked about ballistic missile production. They said the Iranians have been building missiles. They've been hiding missiles. We don't know where these missiles are. And so it's likely the Iranians will continue to launch missiles and drones throughout the period of conflict. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. So the president of the United States was briefed on all of this. But he's surrounded by a bunch of sycophants, including Pete Hegseth, who said, we are warriors, Mr. President. We have the warriors ethos. We are lethal. We're the most lethal people in the world. And he basically cheerleaded America into this war, convincing the president to disregard his intelligence professionals and his military professionals and go with Pete Hegseth, non-woke. Anybody talking about the law of war is a jag-off. That's what he called him, jag being the judge, Judge Advocate General. But he, jag-off. He's making fun of them, mocking them, as if law doesn't matter. And the president's going for this because he loves that kind of stuff, because it's stroking his ego, making him feel good. And he's surrounded by Marco Rubio, who's nodding his head stupidly, Scott Bessent, who's nodding his head stupidly. The most stupid people in the world are advising this president. The two people that have a brain on their shoulders, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and Tulsi Gabbard, are being disregarded. And J.D. Vance is in the corner silent. I mean, this was J.D. Vance's moment to stand up and say, no, Mr. President, we can't support this war. This is an illegal war of aggression. There's no justification under the law of war for this. I'm your vice president. I'm telling you, I won't support this. I support the assessments but J.D. Vance remains silent because he's too much of a coward. He wants to be president, so he has to play the game. But basically, this happened because Donald Trump is not a very smart man. He has no moral compass. He can be easily misled by people who simply stroke his ego, and that gets Donald Trump to go whichever direction they want him to go. And Pete Hegseth is a war criminal, itching for a major conflict to prove the lethality of his new improved Department of War.
Here is some breaking news. I don't know this person by name, but the United States Counterterrorism Director, Joe Kent, just resigned over the war, saying, quote, you ready for this, Scott? Iran posed no imminent threat to the United States.
Joe Kent was a former Special Forces officer, probably made famous. I mean, he was a very, well-renowned, well-regarded. So, but his wife was a naval special warfare operator linguist, and she was killed in Syria in the ISIS bombing. She was very highly decorated, very highly regarded, and so Kent became, known as I think her name was Shannon Kent's husband, and he ran for Congress several times in Washington State, but couldn't break through the party system. But he had a good reputation. He's very conservative, very hawkish, very MAGA, and Trump appointed him to this position. And he was qualified for the job, but he has a conscience. He's one of those people who actually knows what the Constitution is, knows the oath he took, and understands what a real threat is. Unlike Donald Trump, whose biggest threat in life has been bone spurs. Kent was on the front lines. Kent buried his wife, who was on the front lines. He knows this stuff. So he did the honorable thing. And hopefully this is the beginning of a wave of resignations of men and women of honor who recognize that what we're doing here is just, it's not only wrong. I mean, it's not just that we're losing, Judge. I mean, that's bad enough, but it's against the law. This is literally the definition of an illegal war of aggression. And where wars of aggression stand in the pantheon of international law. Judge Jackson said it's the greatest war crime of all, because from this war crime, all other crimes are committed. And yet the United States is now willfully carrying out an illegal war of aggression. And we know it's illegal because Donald Trump says he doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about international law. He doesn't need to go to Congress. He doesn't need congressional approval. He's the president. As he told the World Economic Forum, I am a dictator. I don't care about international law. I only go with what's here. Well, what's here isn't connected to what's here, because what's here doesn't work. And Pete Hegseth whispers in here, and what's here starts to beep because somebody's stroking him. And off we went to war. And finally, we have somebody willing to say, no, I'm not playing this game.
You mentioned Vice President Vance. Here is a reporter asking him, how can you support the war when you spent your career opposing it? Chris, cut number 16.
I know what you're trying to do, Phil. You're trying to drive a wedge between members of the administration, between me and the president. What the president said consistently, going back to 2015, and I agreed with him, is that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. We have taken this military action under the president's leadership. I think all of us, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, should pray for success and pray for the safety of our troops. That's the approach that I've taken. Make it as successful as possible.
So there's no hesitation, given your past statements, with the current operation?
What do you mean there's no hesitation with my past statements?
Given your skepticism of foreign adventurism, you were a critic of the global war on terror previously.
Well, I think one big difference, Phil, is that we have a smart president, whereas in the past we've had dumb presidents. And I trust President Trump to get the job done, to do a good job for the American people, and to make sure that the mistakes of the past aren't repeated. Absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
Look, JD's been great.
Sycophant with a capital S.
And again, just if the reporters, were worth their salt, they would have said, well, what nuclear program? Your director of national intelligence, who's still your director of national intelligence, testified before Congress saying there is no nuclear weapons program. Now, President Trump said he doesn't believe her. Then why does she still have the job?
Right.
And then I would ask the other question, were you briefed by the DNI going into this about the update based upon what was that briefing? Because the answer is yes, you were briefed, and she said there is no nuclear weapons program. I also would have asked, what did Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner report to you? The very first thing they said the Iranians told them. And the answer is that there's 450 kilograms of uranium hexafluoride enriched to 60%. Now, why is this important? See, Witkoff and Kushner went, they're threatening us with 10 bombs. But what the Iranians were actually doing is saying, we haven't done a damn thing with this. All you guys accusing us of trying to make a weapon. If we were trying to make a weapon, we would have further enriched this material. We'd begin to turn it into a metal and all that. It's in the original condition it was before the June War started. It's all here, and we're willing to work with you to verify that it's all here. The Iranians were saying, we don't have a nuclear weapons program, and we're ready to prove it. And yet the Trump administration didn't want to hear that answer because he ordered the diplomacy to take place after he made the decision to go to war. And so the diplomacy was always a cover, always going to be a lie. But everything J.D. Vance said in there was an absolute lie, up to and including that we have a smart president now. This president doesn't know anything. This president's a liar. He's confused. I mean, he literally, he made a statement yesterday to the effect of, well, we've won this war. I mean, we've won decisively. It's over. It's a decisive defeat. why are the Iranians continuing to shut the Strait of Hormuz? That's not fair, is it? I mean, why don't they just recognize that we've won the war? Does that sound like a smart president to you? It sounds like a deluded man who's confused, maybe, pre-dementia to kicking in, but that's not a normally functioning brain for a commander-in-chief who just took his nation to war and is getting his ass handed to him.
How badly, and I'm going to ask you if we know this because of their notorious censorship, has Israel been damaged by the Iranian counterattacks?
Well, the first thing we know is that Israel can't defend itself. I mean, they're carrying out offensive operations, but those offensive operations haven't resulted in a diminishment of the Iranian attacks. The Iranian attacks are constant, continuous, and accurate. The Iranians are specifically targeting critical infrastructure, defense infrastructure, and then also the infrastructure that is used to power the nation. They've taken out the Haifa refineries. They've taken out power stations in Tel Aviv. They've taken out military headquarters, intelligence headquarters. They're starting to strike air bases with great precision. They're striking bunkers, leadership bunkers, and they're hitting what they aim at. And the Israelis know this, and this is what was happening at the end of the 12-day war. The Israelis started to see that the Iranians were hitting them with high precision, very destructive weapons that couldn't be shot down. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu was shaking hands, called Trump and said, we have to end this thing. And that's when Trump made the phone call to the Iranians. And then Midnight Hammer came in. But today, the war continues, and the Israelis are seeing every day this war goes on, the Iranians are hitting them with bigger weapons, stronger weapons, more accurate weapons, and these weapons are hitting their targets. These are not indiscriminate attacks against Israeli civilians. If there were, the death count would be through the roof. These are very precise, precision strikes against well-defined targets, and they're achieving their results. The Israelis are in a state of panic right now. They don't know what to do because they can't stop the missiles from being launched, and the United States hasn't succeeded in toppling the regime. And so this war goes on, but every day it goes on, the Israelis are getting struck. They closed Ben Gurion Airport the other day. Nobody can leave. And the airport is full of people who are panicking right now. They say, we have to leave. What's going to happen is that Israel is going to become uninhabitable to a significant percentage of their population. And when the airport does leave, when the ports open up, they may lose 20% of their population. When that happens, that's the end of Israel. Once Israel starts to depopulate, the demographics of the region alone speak to the fact that the Palestinians will become the vast majority, and we won't be talking about a state of Israel in 10 years. We're talking about a state of Palestine. This is what the Israelis fear, and this is what's happening. This is the result of what the Iranians are doing. And people need to realize the Iranians understand this. Iran is the only nation that has in their constitution a clause that says that they are constitutionally obligated to support the state of Palestine, the creation of the state of Palestine. And so Iran is carrying out military actions against Israel, not just designed to punish Israel, but designed to create the framework in which a Palestinian state can exist. And this requires the defeat of the greater Israel Zionist cause.
Here's Foreign Minister Arachi, whom you and I have met, talking about this very subject. I believe it's earlier today. Chris, number 17.
When we say we do not want a ceasefire, it is not because we are seeking war. It is because this time, this entire conflict must be brought to a definitive conclusion in such a way that our enemies will never even contemplate the possibility of repeating these attacks and this aggression. And I firmly believe that even up to this very moment, they have already begun to absorb a very profound and lasting lesson.
Already begun to absorb a very profound and lasting lesson. How reasonable is it to fear that the Israelis, backs to the wall, cities crumbling, will resort to nuclear?
We're not there yet, but that is, if this war continues going this way and we start to see the demographic adjustments, the Israelis are going to come to have what is known as a come to Jesus moment, even though they're Jewish. And basically, they're going to have to confront the fact that the Israeli Jewish homeland experiment has failed. And at some point in time, there's going to be a singularity called Palestine that will be governed by a Muslim majority. The question then is, do they use nuclear weapons? And the answer is no, they won't, because there just won't be any justification. There's not waves of armies coming. We're talking about the collapse of Israel. And then, so what do? You voluntarily give them up. You use the South African model. And I believe at that point, Israel will go to the United States, and the United States will approach the International Atomic Energy Agency, and Israel will make a declaration, and the IAEA, supervised by the United States, because we're not going to let anybody else get in there, we're going to go in there and we're going to take apart the Israeli nuclear weapons program right before Israel collapses as a Jewish state and becomes a mixed Jewish, Muslim, Palestinian state. That's the direction I'm seeing. I'm not worried about Israeli nuclear weapons going off, because this isn't land armies seeking to overrun Israel. This is Israel starting a war, opting into a war, and then losing this war. And, Iran will be pounding it with missiles. What will Israel do? What targets will they strike? And Israel has to understand that if they do that, that 450 kilograms of highly enriched, or 60% enriched uranium hexafluoride will be converted into 92% enriched uranium metal that'll go into up to 5 warheads that will make Israel disappear. I don't believe the Iranians have done the bomb, but if the bomb gets dropped on them, it won't get what it needs to get, and the Iranians will respond by taking Israel off the map in a matter of a week or two after that, if Pakistan doesn't do it first. Once you start using nuclear weapons, we're living in a day of an age where there is no arms control. That's why I wrote that book that you wrote the wonderful comments to, Highway to Hell. It's about a world without arms control, and that's what we're living in right now. We live in literal nuclear anarchy. And if Israel were to use nuclear weapons against Iran, there is a 100% guarantee that Israel would cease to exist, and a possibility that the United States would lose a coastal city as well to nuclear terrorism, because the United States is responsible for this. The Islamic world is not going to sit by silently while Israel nukes Iran. That just isn't going to happen. So I think when push comes to shove, the Israelis, rather than using these nuclear weapons, will voluntarily turn them over to the international community to dispose of, so that these weapons don't fall in the hands of an Islamic state.
Wow. I have Joe Kent's letter. I would love to read it, but it's way too long. But it's very, very, he sent it to the president. It'll be on the front pages tomorrow or posted in an hour or so. It's very, very direct, and accuses the Israelis of deluding the president. Exactly what you have told us about, Scotty. Scott, thank you very much. Thanks for your passion, and thanks for your extraordinary knowledge of the way all these things work. Deeply and profoundly appreciated.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. All the best, my dear friend.